Charlie Kirk has been shot in the neck. The 31-year-old conservative activist, founder of Turning Point USA and father of 2 young children, was speaking at Utah Valley University when gunfire erupted just 20 minutes into the event. The bullet tore through his neck, sending the crowd into a frenzy as people dove for cover and security dragged him from the stage, leaving a pool of blood on the ground where he'd been sitting. Kirk, who rose to prominence as an outspoken conservative speaker at college campuses, was immediately rushed to a hospital, but his condition remains undisclosed. The tragedy unfolded against a tense backdrop. Over 14,000 students and faculty had signed a petition demanding that the university cancel his appearance, citing his controversial rhetoric. Instead, he arrived under the banner of his American Comeback Tour, only for the event to end in violence. Authorities confirmed that an older man was arrested, with reports suggesting the shot came from a rooftop 200 yards away. Police immediately locked down the campus as the FBI joined the investigation, while political leaders from Donald Trump to Utah senators issued prayers in outrage. As of now, Charlie's death has not been confirmed, but given the severity of his injuries, the outlook is quite grim. 2014, comedian Tracy Morgan was critically injured in a car crash on the New Jersey Turnpike when a Walmart tractor-trailer suddenly slammed into his limo van. The collision killed his close friend and fellow comedian James McNair and left Morgan with a broken femur, broken ribs, broken nose, and a traumatic brain injury. Doctors initially feared he might not survive, and he remained in a coma for over a week. The truck driver had reportedly been awake for more than 24 hours, prompting Morgan to sue Walmart for negligence. The company ultimately settled the lawsuit outside of court, and Tracy has publicly forgiven the driver. In 1980, a man named John Burgess, who had lost over $750,000 while gambling, attempted to extort money from Harvey's resort hotel in Nevada by planting one of the most sophisticated homemade bombs the FBI had ever seen. Disguised as a copy machine and weighing over 1,000 pounds, the device was placed on the second floor of the casino along with a ransom note demanding $3 million. The FBI evacuated the building and spent hours trying to disarm the bomb, but when they attempted to disable it using a controlled charge, the entire device detonated. The explosion damaged much of the building and caused over $18 million in damage, but miraculously no one was killed. Burgess was later arrested, convicted, and died while in prison. Filming Black Panther and other Marvel movies, Chadwick Boseman was secretly undergoing intensive treatment for stage 3 colon cancer, enduring surgeries and constant chemotherapy between shoots. Even most of the cast and crew had no idea that Chadwick was sick. He kept his diagnosis completely private, sharing it only with a small circle of family, his producing partner, and a few close confidants. Despite the pain and exhaustion, Boseman still continued to visit children with cancer at St. Jude's Hospital. Many of the kids he visited passed away before Chadwick did, never knowing that their hero was also fighting the same battle. In November of 1990, Life magazine published this haunting photo of AIDS activist David Kirby on his deathbed, surrounded by his grieving family in an Ohio hospital. Captured by photographer Therese Frere, the image became known as the photo that changed the face of AIDS. It humanized the epidemic at a time when stigma and fear were rampant, showing the devastating personal toll of the disease. With his family's consent, the photo was shared globally, sparking empathy, outrage, and awareness, ultimately helping to shift the public perception of AIDS. Tila Tequila was one of the internet's first ever influencers, rising to fame on MySpace before landing an MTV dating show that made her a household name. But after the spotlight faded, her life spiraled into chaos, marked by heavy drug use, mental breakdowns, and increasingly disturbing behavior. She once claimed to have died and been resurrected, called herself the Queen of the Alt-Right, and posed in Nazi uniforms giving the Hitler salute in front of Auschwitz. After being banned from several platforms including Twitter and Facebook, Tila later declared herself a celestial being who was sent here to destroy Satan. In 1967, Singapore was gripped by a bizarre mass panic known as Coro, or genital retraction syndrome, where thousands of men became convinced their schlongolians were shrinking into their bodies and that they would die if it vanished completely. Fueled by rumors that tainted pork was to blame, hospitals were flooded with terrified men clutching their groins, some even using clamps or strings to hold it in place. Over 400 cases were reported within just a few days. Pork sales plummeted, and public health officials had to step in to calm the chaos. July 14, 2017, Chester Bennington appeared in a carpool karaoke episode with comedian Ken Jeong. In the video, Chester looks joyful and full of life, laughing, cracking jokes, and singing along to Linkin Park hits as well as popular songs like Hey Ya. The footage offers a bittersweet glimpse of a man who appeared to be genuinely happy just 6 days before he tragically took his own life. In 1993, a Mexican zoo official was arrested in Miami after trying to illegally purchase a live gorilla, only to discover the animal was actually an undercover agent in a gorilla suit. The operation was part of a federal wildlife trafficking bust and led to one of the most ridiculous arrests in American history. As a child in the Philippines, boxing legend Manny Pacquiao ran away from home after witnessing a horrifying act. His father, drunk and enraged, killed and ate the family's pet dog. Devastated, Pacquiao fled and began living on the streets, sleeping in a cardboard box and surviving by selling donuts and scraps. The trauma of watching that happen to his beloved pet pushed him into a life of brutal survival at just 12 years old, an early glimpse of the hardship and violence that would define his relentless drive in the ring. At a January concert in 1982, Ozzy bit the head off of a bat that was thrown on stage. Ozzy claims he thought it was rubber, but it was actually a live bat that forced him to be treated for rabies. One night in 1989, at the height of his drug addiction, Ozzy randomly told his wife Sharon, "We've come to a decision that you have to die." He then lunged at her and began choking her before Sharon managed to press the panic button under her table, and the next thing she knew, Ozzy was gone and the cops had arrived. She was later quoted saying, "I had no idea who was sat across me on the sofa, but it wasn't my husband. He goes to a state where he gets a look in his eyes where his shutters are down, and I couldn't get through to him." Ozzy said he had no recollection of the event, and Sharon dropped all charges. After an ATV accident in 2003, Ozzy stopped breathing and was technically dead for about 2 minutes before being revived. The crash left him with a broken collarbone, ribs, and neck vertebrae, and his heart reportedly stopped during surgery. Between this incident, several tour accidents, drug-induced seizures, falls, and multiple surgeries, Ozzy now has permanent nerve damage and a metal rod in his spine. He's admitted that even just standing up without help is a massive struggle. In 1982, while wearing his wife Sharon's dress during a photo shoot near the Texas Alamo, Ozzy drunkenly urinated at a memorial erected in honor of those who died at the famous battle. Ozzy was arrested and ended up being banned from the city of San Antonio for a decade. While on tour with Motley Crue in 1984, Ozzy asked Nikki Sixx for a line of cocaine. Upon being told there was none left, Ozzy grabbed a straw and proceeded to snort some ants off the ground. Nikki later confessed, "From that moment on, we knew there was always someone who was sicker and more disgusting than we were." During a drug-fueled breakdown, Ozzy once shot all of his family's cats, and then sat under a piano for hours with a knife and a shotgun, waiting for Sharon to come home. He later described it as the lowest point of his addiction and the moment he realized he had completely lost control. In the early 1980s, Ozzy hired a performer named John Edward Allen, a dwarf actor who appeared in Blade Runner, and nicknamed him Ronnie to mock rival singer Ronnie James Dio. As part of Ozzy's live shows, Allen was theatrically hung from a noose on stage every night during the Diary of a Madman tour. Allen struggled with alcoholism throughout his life and died from a drug overdose in 1999 at the age of 50. In 2010, Ozzy had his genome sequenced to determine how it was possible for him to still be alive after so many years of abusing his body. Researchers found mutations related to addiction, metabolism, and Ozzy's Neanderthal ancestors. In fact, he carries several 100,000 genetic variants that had never been seen before by scientists. Meaning if Ozzy wasn't a literal mutant, he likely would have died decades ago, but is still breathing at the ripe age of 76. Morbid Facts, Part 655. In 2020, Tim Bleafnik appeared on Family Feud and joked that the biggest mistake he made at his wedding was saying "I do."
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding? Honey, I love you, but said I do. Not my mistake. Not my mistake. I love my wife.
But 3 years later, in February of 2023, his estranged wife Rebecca Bleafnik was found shot 14 times in their home while their 3 young boys were upstairs. The couple had apparently been going through a bitter divorce, and Tim went to the extreme to deal with it. He was arrested, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When 36-year-old Heather McManamy was diagnosed with terminal cancer, she began writing dozens of greeting cards for her young daughter to open in the years after she was gone, covering birthdays, graduations, heartbreaks, and even her wedding day. Each card was filled with love, jokes, and advice, allowing her daughter to still receive words of comfort and celebration long after Heather's death in 2015. It was her way of staying present for every milestone she knew she wouldn't live to see. Months leading up to his death, actor and comedian Chris Farley was visibly deteriorating, sweating profusely, coughing up blood, and often unable to walk without assistance. His appearances on SNL and late-night shows became increasingly erratic as producers began to fear he might die right on set. On December 18, 1997, he was found face down in his Chicago apartment wearing only a shirt after several days of binging on alcohol and hard drugs. The last person to see him alive was a sex worker he had hired named Heidi Hauser. As she was leaving, Farley reportedly followed her down the hall while begging her, "Don't leave me, please don't leave me," which were likely his final words. The cause of death was a speedball overdose, a lethal mix of cocaine and morphine. Eerily, Farley idolized John Belushi and always said he wanted to be just like him, even saying in sketches, "I'll probably go out like Belushi." Both comedians died of speedball overdoses at the young age of 33. There were countless serious warning signs leading up to the implosion of the OceanGate Titan submersible. Experts repeatedly flagged the vessel's experimental design, particularly its carbon fiber hull, which is prone to microscopic weaknesses under deep-sea pressure. Former OceanGate employees raised alarms about structural integrity, previous dive malfunctions, the fact that the sub's navigation system relied on a modded Xbox controller, and over 100 documented equipment issues, including a 2022 incident where passengers heard alarming cracking sounds as the pressure increased. But despite this, OceanGate's CEO Stockton Rush pushed forward, publicly dismissing regulation as a barrier to innovation. In fact, the warning signs were so clearly numerous that after the implosion, many have speculated that Rush may have even had suicidal intentions, citing his repeated disregard for safety warnings and his presence on board during the fatal dive, though no evidence has officially confirmed this theory. Morbid Facts, Part 644. Before becoming one of boxing's most infamous promoters, Don King was no stranger to violence. In 1954, he shot and killed a man who was allegedly trying to rob one of King's gambling operations. The killing was ruled self-defense, and King walked free. But in 1966, he was involved in a far more brutal incident, stomping a man to death over a $600 gambling debt. He was convicted of manslaughter and served only 4 years in prison. After his release, King quickly climbed the ranks of the pro boxing world, building a multi-million-dollar empire despite the bodies he left behind. In 2001, an elderly Japanese man named Tatsuo Osako passed away quietly at the age of 88. It wasn't until after his death that people discovered he had helped over 2,000 Jewish refugees escape Nazi persecution during World War II by quietly stamping their travel documents and sheep-herding them onto ships bound for safety. He never spoke of his actions, kept no accolades, and lived a modest life as a travel agent. His family only found out that he'd secretly saved thousands of lives after discovering old photos and records that were tucked away in his home. In 2008, Mark Ruffalo's younger brother Scott, a well-known Beverly Hills hairstylist, was found slumped on his bathroom floor with a single execution-style gunshot wound to the back of his head. He died a week later as police called it a targeted killing and questioned 2 individuals who were ultimately not charged. Today, Scott's death still remains an unsolved Hollywood mystery, a wound his older brother Mark still carries. Mark later said, "You never get over it, you just get used to it." In 2008, a 7-year-old boy from India named Akrit Jaswal performed life-changing surgery on a poor village girl whose fingers had been fused together from severe burns. Her family couldn't afford proper medical care, so in desperation they turned to Akrit, a child prodigy who had taught himself medicine by reading textbooks at age 5. Despite no formal training, Akrit successfully separated her fingers, restoring the use of her hand. He later entered college at age 12 and now works as a medical researcher, driven by his mission to cure cancer. While filming in Atlanta in 2023, Jamie Foxx suffered a sudden life-threatening stroke brought on by a brain bleed. The exact cause was never publicly revealed, fueling widespread speculation. Foxx blacked out for 20 days and required emergency brain surgery to save his life. When he finally woke up in a wheelchair, unable to walk or speak, doctors warned him this will be the toughest year of your life. Foxx later described seeing a terrifying hot tunnel and admitted he came within inches of death. He had to relearn basic functions and now calls the experience a brutal reminder of life's fragility. In 2010, 24-year-old Australian woman Phoebe Handsjuk was found dead at the bottom of a trash compactor after somehow plunging feet first down a narrow 12th-floor garbage chute. Experts argued the act would have been virtually impossible without assistance, yet her death was ruled accidental and no one was charged. In 2010, a woman tried to smuggle a live, drugged-up tiger cub through a Bangkok airport, hidden inside her checked suitcase among several plush toy tigers. Security only discovered it when an x-ray revealed bones and a tiny beating heart among the pile of lifeless toys. The cub, barely hanging on to life, was rescued and later rehabilitated by a wildlife protection center. Morbid Facts, Part 626. Lady Gaga has publicly shared that when she was 19 years old, she was raped by a music producer who left her pregnant and abandoned after she became badly ill. She's never named the attacker, but recounted that the producer threatened to burn all of her music if she didn't comply with his demands. Gaga later revealed that the trauma led to years of physical suffering and ultimately caused a complete psychotic break. She has never disclosed what happened to the baby. People living within a mile of a golf course have more than twice the odds of developing Parkinson's disease. This is due to continued exposure to certain pesticides, including neurotoxins, which are used to keep fairways and greens well groomed. In 2016, Melissa Ann Blair visited her murderous boyfriend Anthony Powell at the Oregon State Penitentiary and passed him 7 small balloons filled with methamphetamines while kissing him. Powell swallowed the balloons to smuggle them into the prison, but 2 of them ruptured in his stomach, leading to his eventual death from methamphetamine toxicity. Morbid Facts, Part 623. Ezra Miller has a long track record of disturbingly erratic and violent behavior that has deeply tarnished his public image. In 2020, Miller was caught on video choking a woman and throwing her to the ground outside of a bar in Iceland, an act the victim later confirmed was not staged. In 2022, he was arrested multiple times in Hawaii for aggressive outbursts, including lunging at patrons in a karaoke bar and throwing a chair that struck a woman in the head. That same year, Miller was accused of grooming a 12-year-old girl and using drugs, intimidation, and emotional manipulation to control her. He then hosted a woman and her children inside a home in Vermont that was allegedly filled with unattended firearms and marijuana, where one toddler reportedly nearly choked on a bullet. Reports have also surfaced of Miller claiming to be a messianic figure, identifying as both Jesus and the devil. With his career now in shambles, Miller has acknowledged his suffering from complex mental health issues. Morbid Facts, Part 621. Creator of Naruto Masashi Kishimoto endured a grueling work schedule that pushed him to the brink of physical and emotional collapse. He routinely worked up to 20 hours per day, leading to several hospitalizations, and even missing the birth of his own child due to crushing deadlines. By the final arcs of Naruto, he admitted to feeling emotionally numb, simply trying to survive the demands of the series. Writing certain death scenes took a drastic personal toll on him, and he received constant death threats from fans over controversial plot decisions. Much of his work was inspired by feelings of deep isolation and insecurity, stemming from his youth and the constant comparisons to his twin brother. These personal struggles bled into Naruto's themes of loneliness, rejection, and the desperate need for acknowledgement. In 1992, Pepsi launched a promotion in the Philippines called Number Fever, offering 1 million pesos to anyone with the winning bottle cap number, a life-changing prize for most people in the country at the time. On May 25th, the winning number announced was 349, but due to a printing error, over 600,000 caps with that number had been distributed. Thousands of people thought they had won, only to be told their prizes wouldn't be honored, and chaos quickly ensued. Riots broke out, Pepsi trucks were bombed, and at least 5 people were killed, including a mother and her child when a grenade was thrown at a delivery truck. Pepsi offered small consolation payments, but the damage was done. The scandal became one of the most infamous marketing disasters in history, and Pepsi never fully regained public trust in the Philippines. During a pro wrestling tag team match in 2015, Rey Mysterio delivered a routine dropkick intended to set up his signature 619 move against Perro Aguayo Jr., but Aguayo slumped lifelessly onto the ropes. Unbeknownst to everyone at first, Aguayo had suffered a fatal cervical spine injury, likely caused by the whiplash to his neck from the dropkick. The match eerily continued on for several minutes before anyone realized that something was seriously wrong. Aguayo was soon rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. The cause of death was later determined to be cardiac arrest, due to a cervical stroke caused by 3 fractured vertebrae. The coroner stated that the fractures took place at 2 different moments of impact and that Aguayo died almost immediately. Although Mysterio bore no blame, the incident left him devastated since Aguayo had been his longtime friend. It remains one of the only times a pro wrestler died during a match from in-ring trauma. Morbid Facts, Part 618. Beloved by millions, Latina singer Selena was on the verge of global superstardom when cracks began to show behind the scenes of her fame. One of her most devoted fans, Yolanda Saldivar, had pushed her way into Selena's inner circle, first as president of her fan club, then as manager of her boutiques. But what began as genuine admiration eventually spiraled into obsession and control. Yolanda grew possessive, isolating Selena from others, and was soon suspected of embezzling money. In March of 1995, Selena met her at a Corpus Christi motel to retrieve crucial financial documents. Backed into a corner and fearing exposure, Yolanda pulled out a revolver and shot Selena in the back as she tried to leave. Selena managed to run nearly 400 feet to the lobby, leaving a trail of blood behind her before collapsing. With her final breath, she named her killer as Yolanda Saldivar, the woman who was once her biggest fan. Morbid Facts, Part 617. Celine Dion lost both her husband and brother to cancer within the same week in 2016. She performed shortly after their deaths, later saying the stage was the only place she didn't feel pain. Morbid Facts, Part 616. In 2018, Demi Lovato was found unconscious in her Los Angeles home after ingesting a mix of heroin laced with fentanyl. Her assistant discovered her unresponsive and thought she was already dead since her skin had turned blue. Paramedics administered Narcan to save her life, but what followed was far worse than most people realize. Lovato suffered 3 strokes, a heart attack, and severe brain damage due to a prolonged lack of oxygen from the overdose. She was legally blind for several days and still has blind spots in her vision which affect her ability to drive. She had developed organ failure and placed on dialysis as doctors told her she was only minutes away from death. Even after surviving, her motor skills were severely damaged and she had to relearn how to walk. Demi later admitted that she had asked her dealer for heroin but was instead given fentanyl without her knowledge. Lovato has since spoken openly about the trauma, referring to the near-death experience as the biggest wake-up call of her life. Morbid Facts, Part 615. Adult star FA Reagan appeared in over 400 films before vanishing into obscurity following her 2014 retirement. Her life quickly spiraled into constant legal troubles, hard drug use, and homelessness. On May 7th of this year, she mysteriously disappeared from East Charleston Boulevard in Las Vegas, a corridor infamous for crime and desperation. Last seen wearing green sweatpants and carrying a backpack, Reagan has not been seen or heard from since. Photographer Sam Davis captured the incredible moment a snake eel burst out from a heron's stomach while the bird was still flying, having chewed its way through the heron's throat using its pointed tail. Both animals were likely fatally injured. In the 90s, Disney planned to open a theme park called Disney's America near the Civil War battlefields in Virginia. A Disney executive said the park would let visitors feel what it was like to be a slave. Amid intense public outrage and political pressure, Disney ended up scrapping the disastrous project.